In just 9 minutes, get the best moments from the 3-hour Joe Rogan podcast with Felipe Esparza, aired on February 21st, 2025. From the raw hustle of stand-up comedy to the dark side of Hollywood, crazy conspiracies, and laugh-out-loud stories, this summary packs it all. Stick around till the end. You won't want to miss the wildest revelations from this epic conversation. Here are the key takeaways from the podcast. Takeaway 1, the grind of a stand-up comic. Felipe Esparza shares the reality of being a comedian before making it big. Stand-up comedy is not just about telling jokes, but about hustling to make a living. Back in the day, comedians could perform at multiple small gigs, making around $500 a week just by grinding nonstop. Many comics didn't have managers or agents, so they had to find gigs on their own and constantly be on the move. Boston, for example, was a hot spot for stand-up, with underground comedy nights and cutthroat competition. You could have all the talent in the world, but if you weren't willing to hustle, you'd never get anywhere. For example, Felipe recalls performing in small towns where audiences had thick regional accents, and just pronouncing the town's name wrong could get you in trouble. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 2, the reality of overnight fame. Becoming famous isn't all glitz and glamour. Felipe and Joe discuss how sudden success can be overwhelming and even damaging. Many famous people, like Elvis Presley, struggled with the burden of massive fame at a young age. When you have no peers who understand your situation, it can lead to loneliness and paranoia. Some stars turn to managers who might not have their best interests at heart, leading to financial and personal struggles. Fame can make a person feel invincible at first, but in the long run, it often takes a serious toll. For example, Felipe jokes that if he got famous overnight, he would probably be running around with a giant cold sore, completely losing his mind. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 3, the Vegas comedy scene. Joe and Felipe talk about why comedians either love or hate performing in Las Vegas. Vegas is convenient for some artists because they don't have to travel, but doing the same show every night can feel like being trapped. The city's high energy and wild atmosphere can either fuel creativity or drive performers crazy. Many comedians have built a strong following there, but living in Vegas means dealing with the non-stop party environment. Some comics thrive in this setting, while others prefer the unpredictability of touring. For example, Joe points out that people don't just go to Vegas. They go there to get wild, which means every show is unpredictable. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 4, the dark side of the entertainment industry. The conversation touches on how shady the business side of entertainment can be. Some managers and agents take advantage of artists, locking them into bad contracts. Many entertainers, including Jimi Hendrix, were rumored to have been manipulated or even harmed by those managing them. The business is filled with stories of artists who lost control over their own careers. If you don't stay vigilant, success can quickly turn into a nightmare. For example, Jimi Hendrix was reportedly trying to leave his manager before he mysteriously died, with conspiracy theories surrounding his death to this day. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 5, the brutal honesty of comedy. In the world of comedy, you either survive or get eaten alive. Some of the best comedians never made it big because they were too raw for mainstream audiences. Stand-up clubs used to be a battleground where weak performers got destroyed by the crowd. Some comedians were so good that following them on stage was almost impossible. Comedy in places like Boston was so competitive that comics had to be fearless to survive. For example, Joe describes how big-name headliners would come to Boston thinking they were famous, only to get absolutely wrecked by local comedians who were funnier and more aggressive. We're halfway through the video. Thank you for sticking with us this far. If you're enjoying it, please give us a thumbs up and share it in your WhatsApp groups. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to comment below. To see more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Now let's continue with the video. Takeaway 6, the evolution of media. Joe and Felipe discuss how entertainment and media have changed drastically over the years. In the past, people had only a few TV channels, so anything that aired had massive influence. Now with the internet, comedians can build their own audiences without relying on TV networks. This freedom allows artists to create content without executives interfering. At the same time, the market is oversaturated making it harder to stand out. For example, Joe remembers when Fox was considered the edgy network with shows like The Simpsons and In Living Color, but now it's known more for news than entertainment. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 7, Conspiracy Theories and Wild Stories. Felipe and Joe dive into some of the craziest conspiracy theories, many of which sound unbelievable but still make you think. Some people believe that powerful groups secretly control the entertainment industry. If an artist tries to break free or refuses to play by the rules, they could be silenced in shocking ways. There are theories that some famous musicians and actors didn't die naturally, but were actually taken out because they became a threat to someone's business. They also discuss strange and unexplained events in history that make you wonder how much of what we know is really true. While many of these stories sound exaggerated, some have just enough mystery around them to keep people questioning. For example, Jimi Hendrix's death is often debated. Some claim he died from an accidental overdose, while others believe his manager had him killed because Hendrix wanted to leave and take control of his own music catalog. If that wasn't suspicious enough, shortly after Hendrix died, his girlfriend also mysteriously fell off a roof. Coincidence or something more? Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 8, the impact of drugs on artists. Drugs have played a major role in shaping the careers of many entertainers, often in a bad way. Many of the greatest musicians and comedians struggled with addiction. Some of the most brilliant creative moments have come from drug-influenced artists. Unfortunately, addiction usually leads to tragedy, cutting careers short. The rock and roll lifestyle is glamorous at first, but often leads to self-destruction. For example, they talk about how the 1960s music scene was fueled by drugs like LSD and heroin, influencing legendary rock music, but also leading to many early deaths. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 9, the weirdest history lessons. Joe and Felipe love diving into strange historical facts that most people don't know. They discuss ancient burial sites that use mercury as a theft deterrent. They joke about how people in the past lived in absolute filth without realizing how disgusting it was. The way sanitation changed human health is one of the biggest, yet most overlooked, breakthroughs in history. Some of the scariest and funniest moments in history come from people just not knowing any better. For example, Joe brings up a story where a president might have died from drinking contaminated water because waste was dumped too close to the White House. Now let's move to the last takeaway. Takeaway 10. The hustle never stops. Felipe reminds aspiring comedians that the grind never truly ends, even after success. Making it in comedy is a long journey that requires patience and dedication. Even after getting a big break, you still have to keep working to stay relevant. Many successful comedians still do smaller shows just to keep their skills sharp. The moment you stop pushing yourself, your career can start to fade. For example, Felipe talks about how he won Last Comic Standing, but it still took him 12 years to really establish himself, despite someone telling him it would take only 6. What do you think about the reality of fame and success in comedy? Do you believe in any of the conspiracy theories discussed in the podcast? Comment below and let us know. Here is a brief introduction about Felipe Esparza. Felipe Esparza is a stand-up comic, actor, and host of the podcast What's Up, Fool? Watch his new special Raging Fool only on Netflix. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this summary of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast with Felipe Esparza informative. If you're interested in learning more about these topics, I encourage you to watch the full podcast on YouTube by clicking on the link in the description below. If you enjoyed watching this video, please leave a like below and share this video in your WhatsApp groups. You can also discuss about this video by commenting below. To get more such videos in your timeline, press the subscribe button below.